Billionaire pretends to sleep to test his cleaning lady's daughter. Billionaire Henry Walker sat motionless in his leather armchair, eyes barely open, his breathing slow and steady. The large office was eerily silent, except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. His gaze remained fixed on the wide-open safe across the room, where piles of cash sat exposed in full view, more money than most people earned in an entire lifetime. His test was simple, but it was a test he had thought about for a long time. Could anyone resist temptation when faced with such wealth? As expected, it was the young daughter of his cleaning lady who was about to provide him with the answer he sought. Little Mia, barely 6 years old, entered the room holding her mother Lena's hand. The two had arrived for the night shift, a routine that had continued for the past 2 years at Henry's company. Mia wore small yellow gloves, a gift from Lena to make her daughter feel included as she accompanied her mother during school breaks. Henry had planned this moment meticulously. After discovering that his business partner had embezzled millions, his faith in humanity had been shattered. Now at 47 years old, he had built an empire, but he no longer knew whom he could trust. This test would confirm his suspicions once and for all. Lena immediately set to work, dusting the bookshelves, while Mia wandered around, her curious eyes taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. The young girl's gaze fell upon the open safe. It was filled with stacks of bills in various denominations, carelessly thrown together. The sight of the money sparkled in her eyes, but her reaction was not what Henry had expected. Instead of rushing to the piles of cash like any normal child might, Mia quietly observed the disorganization in the safe. Her tiny hands reached for the bills, gently lifting them one by one. She began to carefully stack the money, separating the bills by their denominations and aligning them with meticulous precision, like a tiny accountant. Her hands worked with the delicate care of someone who understood the value of order, even if they had no concept of wealth. "Mommy," Mia whispered, "Mr. Henry's money is all messy. I'm just fixing it like you taught me to organize our pennies at home." Lena, startled, rushed over. "Mia, you can't touch Mr. Henry's things." "But it was messy, Mommy," Mia insisted, her voice filled with innocent reasoning. "He'll be happy when he wakes up and sees it all tidy." Henry's throat tightened with an unexpected surge of emotion. He had been prepared for disappointment. He had expected Mia to reach for the money, to take a handful or sneak a bill into her pocket. But instead she had chosen to bring order to the chaos. She didn't take a penny. She simply tidied up with a sincerity that struck him to his core. In that moment, something changed in Henry. Mia, a child who probably had never held more than $20 in her hands, had shown him the kind of honesty and integrity that seemed impossible to find in the adult world. Her innocent act of tidying up was a powerful reminder of the values he had lost touch with over the years. As Mia continued to arrange the bills, Henry remained still, watching with a mix of admiration and disbelief. He had expected nothing, but he had just witnessed something that would affect him in ways he couldn't yet understand. "What's the matter, Mr. Henry?" Mia asked, glancing up with innocent curiosity. "You look sad." Before Henry could respond, Lena quickly gathered her daughter and gently pulled her away from the open safe. "Mia, let's go finish your homework," she said, trying to diffuse the situation before Henry had the chance to react. But Henry didn't move. The weight of what had just transpired pressed heavily on his chest. A child with no ulterior motive had shown him more about integrity and decency than any adult in his life ever had. The weeks that followed were quiet, but Henry found himself observing Lena and Mia more closely. Lena worked 2 jobs, cleaning at his company at night and another, office during the day. Mia, ever the diligent daughter, always accompanied her mother, doing her homework or quietly playing in corners while her mother worked. Henry was particularly moved by the way Lena taught her daughter. "We always return what isn't ours," he overheard her say one day. "Even if no one is watching, we do what's right." Mia nodded solemnly, taking the lesson to heart. Lena's life had been difficult. Raised in foster care after losing her parents at a young age, she had struggled to finish high school while working to support herself. College had been an unreachable dream. At 22, she became pregnant with Mia, and the father had disappeared when he found out. Lena had raised Mia on her own, refusing any help she considered charity. Henry began making small but significant changes. Without telling anyone, he increased Lena's salary, justifying it as an adjustment in her work category. However, his generosity did not go unnoticed. Richard Blackwell, the vice president of operations, who was used to privilege and entitlement, noticed the financial shift during a meeting. "Henry, why are we paying extra money to the cleaning staff, especially to her?" Richard sneered, his voice filled with contempt. Henry looked at him, his face stoic. "Lena does excellent work." "Excellent, huh?" Richard scoffed. "I'm just saying you don't reward these people with handouts. You give them an inch and they'll take the whole yard." Richard had always been dismissive of the staff. His words and actions revealed an ingrained prejudice that Henry could no longer ignore. That evening, Henry witnessed a confrontation that made his blood boil. Richard had run into Lena in the hallway, and their interaction was hostile from the start. Richard leaned in, his voice cold. "I know you're getting extra money, Lena. What kind of favors are you doing for it?" Lena's face turned pale, but she stood tall. "I don't understand what you mean, Richard." "You don't have to understand," Richard hissed. "People like you never do." Mia, standing close by, looked up at the exchange, her small frame quivering with fear. "Mommy, why is he so angry?" she whispered. Lena gathered her daughter into her arms, shielding her from Richard's cruelty. "Because, sweetie, some adults are unhappy, and they try to make others feel bad." Henry, watching from his office, clenched his fists. Richard's behavior crossed a line that could never be erased. The attack on Lena, and the fear he had instilled in a child, had pushed Henry to his breaking point. The next morning, he made a call to someone who could help him expose Richard's true character, Marcus Lee, a former FBI investigator and expert in corporate cases. The investigation into Richard's behavior was about to begin. That night, Henry Walker implemented Phase 2 of his plan. He ordered his IT department to install additional microphones in areas where Richard Blackwell, the vice president of operations, had been known to intimidate employees. Officially, the installation was meant to enhance security. In reality, it was a digital trap designed to expose Richard's corruption. On Friday night, Henry waited for Richard to make his move. Alone in his office, Richard believed the coast was clear. He picked up his phone and dialed a number Henry had come to dread. "Dad, you remember that cleaning lady?" Richard began. "She's becoming a problem. I need you to use your connections to create some legal difficulties for her. Maybe we can fabricate something. Suspicion of theft, issues with her documentation, anything that'll force her to resign." Henry's grip tightened on his desk as he listened intently. Richard's father responded with a voice that carried years of privilege. "Richard, are you sure you're not overreacting? She's just a cleaning lady." Richard, however, was relentless. "It's about principle, Dad. We can't let these people feel too comfortable. Soon they'll start demanding rights they don't deserve. It's better to nip it in the bud before they get any ideas." Henry's anger flared as he silently recorded every word. Richard had just confessed to conspiracy to fabricate evidence and explicit racial discrimination. This was more than he could have hoped for. The next morning, Marcus Lee, the former FBI investigator who had become Henry's trusted ally, arrived with a briefcase full of damning evidence. "Henry, you won't believe what I found," Marcus said, flipping open the case. "Richard's posts on private social media are pure supremacist manifestos. I also dug through his past. He's been sabotaging black candidates for years using his father's influence. The guy's been systematically discriminating for 15 years. Henry felt a knot form in his stomach as Marcus showed him screenshots of Richard's racist posts. "This is gold," Henry whispered, staring at the harsh, discriminatory words Richard had posted. But Marcus wasn't finished. "He's planning something for this week. I intercepted messages where he's organizing a stage theft. He's going to plant something valuable in Diana's cleaning cart, then catch her red-handed." Marcus's words hit Henry like a punch in the gut. "What do you mean?" Henry asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Richard's going to plant a $15,000 Rolex watch in her cart, then accuse her of stealing it. He'll call the police, make a scene, and humiliate her in front of everyone," Marcus explained. Henry's blood ran cold. Richard thought he could get away with this, but he was wrong. Henry had been planning for this moment for years, and now it was all coming together. "This ends tonight," Henry said, his eyes narrowing in determination. On Tuesday evening, Richard followed through with his devious plan. At 8 p.m., Diana and Jasmine arrived for their usual cleaning shift. Richard, brimming with arrogant confidence, had already placed a $15,000 Rolex watch in the cleaning cart. It was the perfect setup. Henry, however, had made sure nothing would go as planned. He was watching Richard's every move from his high-resolution monitors upstairs. Meanwhile, Marcus had stationed himself in the parking lot with a van full of recording equipment. 3 investigative journalists handpicked by Henry were ready outside the building. At 8:20, Richard descended to the office where Diana was quietly cleaning while Jasmine did her homework at a nearby table. Richard, accompanied by 2 security guards, pretended to conduct a routine inspection. "Mrs. Jefferson," Richard said with a forced smile, "I need to check your cleaning supplies. We've had reports of missing items." Diana stopped cleaning, her face puzzled. "Mr. Blackwood, I don't understand. What's this about?" Richard lied smoothly, walking directly to the cart where he had planted the watch. "It's standard procedure," he said, lifting the Rolex with exaggerated theatricality. "Ah, how interesting. What's this?" He held the watch up triumphantly. This is a $15,000 watch that went missing from Mr. Walker's office yesterday. Diana Jefferson, I'm afraid you're in big trouble. Diana's face went pale as she tried to comprehend what was happening. I've never seen this watch in my life, she stammered. Richard, dripping with sarcasm, sneered. Of course not, it just appeared on your cart, didn't it? Jasmine, who had been quietly playing, stood up from her chair, frightened by the scene. Mommy, what's going on? She asked. Richard barked at her. Be quiet, child. Your mother will have to explain how expensive items magically appear in her cart. As one of the security guards reached for his phone to call the police, Henry made his move. Thomas Walker stepped into the office doorway with Marcus and 3 people Richard didn't recognize. The look on Richard's face shifted from smug confidence to fear as he saw the group enter. Richard, Henry said, his voice calm but carrying an underlying edge. I think you should hang up that phone. Richard attempted to regain control of the situation. Thomas, I'm glad you're here. We caught your employee stealing your watch. Henry chuckled darkly. My watch? He said, the smile not reaching his eyes. I've been wearing an Apple Watch for 5 years. I've never owned a Rolex. Richard's confidence started to crumble. What? What are you saying? I'm saying, Henry continued, that we've been recording everything. We have video of you planting this watch. Marcus, show him the footage. Marcus held up a tablet displaying the high-definition footage of Richard placing the watch in the cart less than an hour ago. Angle 1, Marcus said, swiping to the next video. Angle 2, Angle 3. We even have your face clearly visible while you checked to make sure no one was watching. Richard was speechless. He tried to say something, but Henry interrupted. Oh, there's more, he said, his voice cold. Marcus, show him the scrapbook we put together. Marcus began projecting images onto a portable screen. First came screenshots of Richard's racist posts. Need to keep these monkeys in their place, Marcus read aloud. That's yours, isn't it, Richard? Diana gasped, covering her mouth. Richard staggered back, but Henry blocked his path. Here's your conversation planning to create legal difficulties for Diana, and here's your confession that it's a matter of principle to prevent these people from getting too comfortable. Richard's face drained of color. Where did you get this? The security system, Henry said with a sly grin. You approved it yourself, remember? Including the call to your father about conspiring to frame an innocent employee. A reporter stepped forward. Mr. Blackwood, would you like to comment on this evidence of systematic racial discrimination and conspiracy to fabricate criminal evidence? Richard looked panicked, realizing he had no way out. You can't use that, he pleaded. I have rights. Henry stood tall. Of course you do. You have the right to remain silent because anything you say will be used against you, not just by the police who are already on their way to arrest you for conspiracy and attempted defamation, but also by the press, the company board, and Diana's lawyers. At that moment, the police arrived, but it was Richard who was arrested. Detective Harris, the officer said, you're under arrest for conspiracy to fabricate evidence, harassment, racial discrimination, and attempted defamation. As Richard was led away in handcuffs, he glared at Diana, his hatred palpable. This won't stand, he hissed. My family has influence. Marcus laughed. Your family has already been notified. You're finished. Diana, still in shock, finally found her voice. Mr. Walker, did you know this was going to happen? I knew Richard was prejudiced, Henry said softly, but I didn't imagine he'd go this far to destroy you. When I found out, I knew I had to stop it. It was time to act. As the dust settled and the echoes of Richard's fall faded, a new chapter began not just for Diana and her daughter, but for an entire company and its vision of fairness. Diana, once a cleaning lady, now stood at the helm of human resources, a powerful advocate for others like her. She was no longer just fighting for her own dignity. She was creating opportunities, making sure that every person in her company, no matter their background, had a chance to rise. Thomas, too, had been forever changed. His encounter with Mia's innocent act of honesty had sparked a fire within him, one that transformed him from a businessman focused solely on profits into a champion of integrity. He had built more than just a company. He had built a legacy of justice, fairness, and empowerment, all thanks to the bravery of a mother and her daughter who had reminded him of the true worth of human decency. And as for Richard, his story became a cautionary tale, one that showed the world that arrogance, prejudice, and cruelty would always be met with the power of truth and compassion. As Jasmine, now 10 years old, prepared for her future, it was clear that the seeds of integrity planted in her early years were already taking root. In the face of adversity, she had witnessed firsthand that standing up for what's right could change the world, one act of kindness at a time. This is the power of courage. This is the power of standing tall when the world tries to knock you down. It's the power of one person, one act of kindness, to spark a transformation that echoes for generations. So, if you're ever in doubt, remember this. It's not about how much you have, but how much you're willing to give. And sometimes the greatest victories aren't in the battles we win, but in the lives we change along the way. If this story of transformation touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to discover more stories that prove that doing good is always worth it, even when it seems impossible.